Welcome to our Ask a Clarkie webinar. We're going to be answering some general questions. We have a couple Clark students here. My name's Carly. I'm going to be your host. I'm a campus visit coordinator at Clark, which means I just graduated from my 5th year at Clark with my master's in international development. I also did my undergrad here, where I was a double major in international development and women's and gender studies. First, we're going to talk about the technical aspects of this webinar. If we want to go to the next slide, there's some information about that. If you look at the bottom of Zoom on your screen, you'll see a chat function, which I know a couple of you use to let me know you can hear me, which I'm grateful for, and a Q&A function. If you're having technical issues, we ask that you use the chat section, but if you want to ask a question to our panelists, please use the Q&A section. There will be someone behind the scenes monitoring the Q&A section and sort of queuing up questions for me to ask the panelists, and that is the best way for us all to keep organized during this. I'm going to allow my participants to introduce themselves. Do you guys want to get going?
Hi, everybody. My name is Maria. I also recently graduated from Clark, from my undergraduate time at Clark. I studied English and media, culture, and the arts with minors in theater and creative writing. And outside of my academics at Clark, I was one of the captains of the Peapod Squad, which was one of our 2 improv comedy groups here. I worked as a peer advisor, helping lead new student orientation and help new students get acclimated to life on campus. And I also had several internships in Worcester. My favorite being at Pulse Magazine, which is a local lifestyle and entertainment magazine in Worcester, that I was able to that I interned for last summer, that I was able to continue writing for in the spring, which is very fun.
Hi, I'm Noah Rowan. I just finished my first year at Clark. I have he, him pronouns. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I am an intended geography major at Clark, and I compete on Clark's squash team as well as Clark's mock trial team. I'm on the transportation committee as well for Clark University Undergraduate Student Council, and I work for a local transit advocacy organization that's working to get the bus system in Worcester, the WRTA, to be fare free.
And I'm Caleb Gibson. I just finished my sophomore year. I'm from East Providence, Rhode Island, pronouns he, him. Currently, I'm a business management major, minoring in data science as well as economics. Outside of my academics, I'm a vice president of our Black Student Union, as well as an e-board member of a group called Focus, which is a male identifying student of color, like discussionary group, talk about like how to talk about subjects or just our school life, as well as I play club soccer.
Awesome, great. So we already have a couple questions in the chat. Start with this first one, which is, could you describe how to get approved for the 5th year at Clark, and what is the criteria? Anyone want to talk about that? Maybe I'm the best person to answer this since I just did 5th year. So to be eligible for 5th year, the general requirement at the university is that you keep a 3.4 GPA throughout your sophomore, junior, and senior year. Your freshman year is sort of a grace period because you're adjusting to school. Certain programs have departmental requirements, certain classes you have to take before you're eligible to get a master's in whatever field you're looking to do. For instance, you cannot do the biology 5th year if you've never taken a biology class, because that wouldn't really go very well. So there are some departmental regulations, but generally if you keep a 3.4 GPA, you're eligible for the program, and you just have to submit a letter of intent, and most people who have that GPA are approved to be a part of the 5th year program.
I think it's also might be relevant to know that you don't have to have you don't necessarily have to have majored in the in a program that would for example, if you want to do like the environmental science 5th year program, some people are environmental science majors in undergrad going into that program, but I also knew somebody who was a philosophy major who went into the environmental science program. So as long as you complete all the prerequisites, you don't have to have majored in that in like the corresponding undergraduate major in order to get into the 5th year program.
Yeah. Our next question is very timely. Please describe your experiences with remote learning this past term. What worked well? What didn't work well? If remote in the fall, what improvements would you like to see?
Great question. I can start with that one. I think that it became very clear as soon as remote learning started that professors became very accommodating and were really trying to be as communicative with their students as possible. I think that professors sort of took on different approaches to remote learning. So some professors continued holding lectures and discussions over Zoom, where some professors decided to cancel sort of lectures and remote class meetings altogether, and would, like I had a professor who would continue assigning readings and assignments that we would have to submit, but would just sort of be available to talk over email and Zoom if you wanted to, but there were no mandatory class meetings to show up for. I think that I sort of saw the professors not necessarily become more, I guess, more lenient with the work that they were expecting of students. I think professors really wanted to make sure that students' like health and well-being was being maintained while we were trying to complete remote learning. And I had professors who became very flexible with deadlines and were really willing to work with students to make sure that we were able to get as much out of the class as possible and have like the best learning experience without it taking a toll on our physical and mental health.
Yeah, so this semester I was taking all 100 level classes across the board, and when everything happened, all of my professors like significantly lowered their expectations, like by a large degree, because of, you know, the expectation that students should prioritize their health and well-being first. But I think that question is really interesting, because obviously that kind of approach doesn't work for all levels. And so at my level, for the classes that I was taking for intro-level classes, it worked well to scale down the syllabus and shave a bunch of things off, and, you know, lower the expectation for what you actually leave the class knowing. But I think distance learning gets really tricky when you have the expectation that the material you learn in one class has to then build up to the next level of classes, and when things start getting more and more complex. And so, like, I had one professor who scrapped the entire syllabus for the rest of the year and just assigned one final paper, and we met with him individually a number of times, and he gave up a bunch of time to Zoom with each of us and work on our papers for that. But for a semester-long, you know, scenario where we would have to be online, I do think that Clark, like, at least from my experience, I would want to see expectations get raised a little bit more, because in my classes, and again, like, my classes were low-level classes. I was only in my second semester of school, but it felt like if I was gonna do it for a semester, I would want slightly higher expectations, so that I didn't feel like I was falling behind, or, you know, getting the short end of the stick, and I wouldn't be prepared later on in school. So that would be my main concern about a semester-long online learning scenario.
I would say for me, pretty much two of my classes were management classes that pretty much were already online with most of their work. So the transition was very easy. We were just doing the same work online, and then one of the classes just had us do listen to lectures and do maybe some like little quiz questions, just like keep up with the work. I had one class, creative actor, which cannot really be done online. It's like an improv acting class, so pretty much 3 hours, 1 day a week. You're in there kind of doing creative, doing like improv games, just learning different stuff like characterization, creating characters, creating scenes. And we only did really 3 things online. We did a little journal that we usually do every week. Then we did, each of us split up into groups, and we made a little TikTok videos that we all shared with each other. And we finally had, which we would usually have as our final show, which we do like a whole improv show in groups with everybody, all our friends there and everything, but we just did that within ourselves. So overall, it really didn't work out online, but our teacher did the best he could, and it felt like he knew that really we couldn't really do too much, but he did the minimum that we could, just to still like keep up and still have fun, even though we really couldn't do all that we could beforehand. And then I had a calculus class that basically just did pretty much online sessions, usually during our class time, so it was a regular class. And for me, that was kind of the hardest, because I'm really a person that needs to be in class to really focus and listen and stuff like that. So sometimes I didn't feel always motivated to go, but I always try my best. And overall, I feel like kind of Noah was saying, it's kind of hard, kind of expectations for people trying to learn online like this. But overall, I think Clark did the best it could. And I think in a situation like this, kind of depends on the person if you're able to kind of do this type of learning or not.
Great, thanks everyone. Just so all of our attendees are aware, there is another webinar tonight at 7 with President David Angel to talk about Clark's plan for the fall and how we're dealing with remote learning. So if you do have more questions about how we're doing that, definitely tune into that webinar or watch the recorded version in the next couple days, because there's going to be a lot of information given out later tonight. But for now, we'll move on to our next question, which Caleb might want to answer. It's about sports. Could you describe the student body's support for existing athletic games on campus? Which sports do students seem to rally around the most?
So yeah, I can start off with that. For me personally, the sports that at least I go see are soccer games, men and women's, as well as now they have men and women's lacrosse, which women's lacrosse is our newest team. And then basketball are the main sports that I like to see and I see the most support for. For some of those, like we have basketball, we have a thing called Midnight Mayhem, which is my favorite thing to go to. It's at the start of our basketball season. It's a 12 o'clock in the typically morning game where it's a kickoff between us and Worcester State. And it's either here or at Clark or there at Worcester State. So this year it was at Clark. And everyone just comes out and supports their side. Obviously wears the colors and everything. It's a really nice event. But usually, yeah, there's a lot of support and a lot of great attendance usually for our sports games because we don't have football, which is a big thing for most people. But for the teams that we do have, we do support it like it's a football team in that aspect.
Great. Thanks, Caleb. We have another question, which is, do students socialize on campus or are they more likely to gather off campus? And where do they most likely gather?
I think the lines between on campus and off campus get a little bit blurred sometimes because, like, what is considered technically on campus is just like dorms and class buildings. But when I think of on campus, I think of like the whole Main South neighborhood. Like it doesn't feel as much like I'm leaving campus to walk to University Park or to walk to a friend's apartment a couple blocks away. And so like the rigid lines of the boundaries of where Clark's property ends isn't really where like my concept of campus ends. And so I'd say that a lot of Clark students start their college experience with a like fairly small radius of life, and you spend most of your time within, the immediate neighborhood that Clark is in. And as you begin to become more comfortable there, then you can explore farther. But at least in the first year, it feels like people mostly hang out in Main South as they're getting comfortable with a new city, possibly a new climate, possibly a new country. And everybody acclimates to a smaller radius first, and it grows over the years.
And I will say, to add on to that, I think that the programming that Clark puts on, whether that is sort of like, whether mostly from student clubs, I think that the programming that happens at Clark throughout the week, but primarily on the weekends, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, does a lot to encourage students to get involved in community on campus. And without there is a lot to do in Worcester, and I think that students find that there are a lot of fun activities to do in the city. But I think that there is a really big sense of community and a really big sense of not having to leave campus, like to have fun on the weekend. And whether those are like a cappella shows or dance shows, or they're like bingo nights that students really get excited about and rally behind, or like cultural events. I think that there is a lot that students do to make campus feel lively and make it a place where you want to hang out and like stay on the weekends. And it does, I think, ultimately lead to students feeling more of a sense of community on campus and like feeling more connected to their peers in the place that they go to school.
Yeah, I really agree with that point because I'm from Rhode Island. I'm 45 minutes away when I'm at Clark. And I always thought like I'll probably come back home a lot, maybe on weekends to see my friends or do some other stuff over here. But I realized after a while, I just loved it at Clark. I loved being in the little community. I felt like I really had no need to come back home because I had all my friends at Clark. We always had events to go to, like Maria was saying. We just would always hang out in the library, talk a lot, play music in our academic commons where you can be loud a little bit. I'm a loud person, so I don't like to be in the quiet parts of the library. But I always felt like there's a place for me at Clark to be with my friends and get to like, hang out and actually do stuff. I never really went off campus too much, but there's always a lot of different restaurants and opportunities to go to off campus, or not off campus, but in no one's perspective. But either way, I always felt like it was something to do.
Great. Thanks, panelists. Our next question is, how does one decide between different meal plans and how do the meal plans work?
In anticipation of this, the how do meal plans work question, I made it's not much, but so I'm gonna go through like a brief, like as quick as I can, crash course of what I know about swaps, and then I'll hand it over to the other panelists. But essentially, there are 3 dinner periods, and there are 2 different dining options. There's the caf and there's the bistro. And if you have an unlimited plan, this is what your day looks like at the caf. You can swipe in as many times as possible. There's no boundaries. And this is what your day looks like at the bistro if you have an unlimited plan. Because even though your plan is like all access, you only have the opportunity to get 1 bistro swap per meal period. So if you only go to the caf and you have an unlimited plan, your plan is truly unlimited. But the like quote unquote all access, you have to like, there is the caveat that at the bistro it is broken up like this. And so to choose between meal plans, you choose between the number of swipes that you get into the caf and the number of dining dollars you get to spend at the bistro. And it's a balancing act where you say, will I be on the go more and want more dining dollars for the bistro, or will I want more swaps at the caf? Although for your first 2 years, if you're living on campus, you're a bit more restricted by what meal plans you can get. And financially, finances don't come into the meal plan choice as much because there are kind of 2 set prices for what a meal plan can be. So it's not like there's a cheapest meal plan and slightly more expensive and it tiers up. You either get this price or this price, and each price has like 6 different options for how you can do your balancing and stacking. That's, yeah.
That was a really great explanation. Love that. In terms of what meal plan to go on as an incoming first year student, I remember that I chose to go on the 15 meals a week option as a first year student, and that gives you like more dining dollars than the all access plan would, but fewer times to swap to the cafeteria. And I felt like the 15 meals a week worked really well for me as a first year student, but then I still was like having extra meals left over, I think just because of the times that I would eat like in correspondence, like when my classes were. And so then I even like dropped down to the 12 meals a week, I think sophomore year, which even though that's still considered a full meal plan. So I think that it really is, there's really no like right answer. Like it's a very personal choice as to like when you like to eat and how many times a day you find yourself needing to eat in the cafeteria. And yeah, I think that everybody sort of has a different experience with that. And there is also, I don't know how long it is, but I know that there's a grace period at the beginning of the semester where you can change your meal plan and be able to like, yeah, get a different amount of dining dollars and a different amount of swaps in. And yeah, change that.
For me, I started off with the all access and I enjoyed it. I mean, you get all access to the caf, and once I found out how much I like the bistro too, the dining dollars that you get is around 50 for all access. It went by pretty quickly. So then my sophomore year, this year, last semester, I switched over to the 15 meal, and I found that was perfect for me because I never really ate breakfast for the most part. So I only did really 2 meals a day and then I had that one extra whenever I wanted to add it in. So because it's 2 a day is equals 14 in all. So like, yeah, so I had that 2 a day over for most those semester, and I felt perfectly fine with it. And then whenever I wanted to go to the bistro for a late night snack or anything like that, I had the dining dollars. You get more. You get around like 150 or so. So you get more to spend in all. So that one it lasted a lot longer than the 50 originally. So whenever I needed that extra little meal at night or something like that, I always had enough money to pay for it without actually paying for it with my real money. So I always felt like that was helpful. If you ever feel like you only have 2 meals a day, I think the 15 meals are the best thing to do. Go for it.
Awesome. We have a question that is super relevant to Maria. Are students able to participate in theater if they are not a theater major?
Absolutely, yes, you definitely can. I'll do sort of a very brief overview of like how to get involved in theater on campus, but there are three main avenues, I would say. There is the theater department, which puts on I believe 2 shows in the fall, 2 shows in the spring. And that is, so yeah, that's the like academic theater department itself, but you don't even have to be a major to participate in those shows. Anybody can. There is Clark University Player Society, which is a student group that produces just straight plays, usually 1 in the fall, 1 in the spring. And they also, you don't have to be a major, anybody can do that. And then there's Clark Musical Theater, which also does a show in the fall and a show in the spring. And I think a couple years ago, like the president of CMT was a computer science major. Like you can really study whatever you want to be involved in the theater groups on campus. And I would say that there is a really good mix usually of majors and non-majors who are involved in the community.
Great, thanks, Maria. Our next question is, have you had the chance to interact with alumni, and what would you say about the strength and support of the alumni network?
I would say a really cool way that students are able to interact with alumni now is through the summer funding opportunity called the Clark Connect Grant Award. So the Clark Connect Award is named after sort of Clark's version of LinkedIn. It's like a Clark alumni and student networking platform, essentially, where students can get connected with alumni in their field and sort of find jobs, mentors, just like get connected to whatever field they want to go into. And so the Clark Connect Internship Funding Award was named after that platform and is available to fund an unpaid internship for a student for the summer, given the student is connected to an alumni mentor who can sort of help them through the process of preparing for the internship, making sure that they are having sort of like talking them through the process, making sure that just being like, I don't know, like somebody to rely on, somebody to talk to if they're having issues. And last summer my unpaid internship was funded through the Clark Connect Award. And my alumni mentor was actually my former boss at admissions, Mitchell, and he had worked with this organization before and was a Clark alum. And so he was a great person to be able to talk to about the work that I was doing at the internship, like writing questions that I had, sort of questions about how he got involved with this magazine, or how he had worked for them previously, but then was still doing freelance writing work for them. So I got to ask him a lot of questions about that. And so, yeah, in general, that was a great experience to sort of have somebody to talk to while I was doing that, about like a very specific internship experience that I was having.
Great, thanks, Maria. We only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to do one more question. But just so you all know, if you posed a question that we didn't have time to answer during the session, we will be reaching out to you with an answer to your question. We just have a limited amount of time, and there's been a lot of questions. So we are going to answer you. It just won't be on this webinar, but you will get your answer soon. My final question is, what most about being a Clarkie?
Can you repeat the question, Carly? Sorry, I think you glitched for a second.
Sure. The question is, what have you enjoyed most about being a Clarkie?
I can start if that's okay. I think that my favorite thing about being a Clarkie is definitely the student culture. I think that Clark students I very quickly saw were a group of students who were super excited and very passionate about the things that they do, without getting too serious about it, without sort of getting too pretentious about it, or making it I don't know, getting big-headed about like the things that they're good at and like the things that they love to do. I think that Clark students are really humble and like do genuinely care about how what they enjoy doing is making a positive impact on the community, whether that's on campus or off campus. I think that in general, we're a very good-natured bunch of people, good sense of humor. I think that, again, we really care about seeing the material impact of what we're passionate about and how that can positively impact communities around us.
Yeah, I would really agree with that, because I love how much people like care about things and how nice they are to you, because I feel like it's so easy to find kind of who you fit in with, because everyone's so open about everything and what they enjoy. And they always, that's why we have like 130 plus clubs and organizations, because everyone's so passionate about what they like and what they want to join in. So you can always join one of those and find out who kind of you fit in with. one of the things I always love to say is how I can't go 5 minutes without saying hi to someone I know, or just say hi while walking if I really don't know them that well. I always have conversations. That's one thing I miss, kind of being with the Zoom semester. You don't really get that anymore. I always miss seeing, yeah, seeing random people, always saying hi, seeing people I know saying hi, but always starting conversations and having fun with my day. Even if it's not a good day between classes and stuff, I always know I can always see somebody I know, or get to know someone in my day. So I always feel like that's a great thing about being at Clarkie.
Yeah, Maria touched on this a little bit, but I think I was really surprised by how unpretentious Clarkies were. And it's nice to be in a community where people can be academic and get things done, but it doesn't feel like a pressure cooker. And it doesn't feel like people are hanging on to stuff like ACT scores or acceptance rates. It, you know, like I entered into Clark and everything that I thought college would be kind of dissolved. And it turned out to just be this really cozy place where everyone's really nice to each other. So it's nothing like I could have expected, but in the best way possible.
Thank you, panelists. That's going to be our last question. We do have some information for you all about our upcoming webinars and how to get in contact with us. If you have more questions that you didn't pose during this webinar, you can email us at admissions@clarkeu.edu, and we will be back to you as soon as we possibly can. You can view all of our past webinars if you missed them on this website listed here. And there is that webinar I talked about earlier with President David Angel about fall 2020. So make sure you tune into that if you have questions about that. But otherwise, thank you for coming. It's been great to answer your questions. We hope you have a great summer as it is now beginning and it is warm out in Worcester. Hope it's warm where you are, and have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.